Hey everyone, obviously I'm on vacation while making this video, which is kind of the price I'd pay for waiting a week before spoiling everything I want to. But here I am. Everyone's anticipating this movie, so what did I think? I enjoyed it, but I didn't like it as much as the other two movies. And I guess the reason why is this was the direction that I feared that Lucasfilm was going to take Star Wars after the fallout that happened during The Last Jedi. And yeah, that's kind of unfortunate because The Last Jedi, I was one of the many people who really liked it. And it was a shot in the arm that the new Star Wars needed in order to stand out from its original form. And unfortunately, The Rise of Skywalker kind of throws most of it aside. Not all of it. But this film was heavy on nostalgia, kind of relied on safe bets, and we don't get as much as the development of the previous one. So yeah, I still gotta say there's some good parts. For all I can say, this new trilogy was able to take a lot of the excitement that we got from the original and use it to new and good uses here. And one of its strengths was that it brought some new characters that we had no problem willingly following side by side with the old guard. And one character, in my opinion, that got stronger was Finn. Now, Finn we've seen defect to the Resistance from being a stormtrooper in The Force Awakens, but we never really dived deep into his character until The Rise of Skywalker. And his development comes when he meets this other character who is kind of similar to him. I mean, very similar to him in every way. Also part of the First Order, now part of the Resistance. So this makes the doubt that he's had throughout the three movies very warranted, because his story is not too different from other people who have been conditioned and told that he has a duty to follow the First Order, and now that thinking is no longer valid to him anymore. And now he has to find his way not only as an individual, but also to see if he can trust his new team at the Resistance. He becomes a commanding officer now, so this kind of gives him something to work for in the end. And I think that's great. And I think he is pretty much the more well-renowned character at the end of this trilogy, in comparison to other characters who are almost equally great as Finn, but sadly get boggled down by the decisions made in The Rise of Skywalker, mainly from, I think, J.J. Abrams. Now, we've seen this in the teasers. We were going to bring back Palpatine. Now, I would have had no problem if it was revealed that he was the instigator before the beginning of the movie. But the fact that we're reintroducing him early into this movie and having him try to control the tables in this movie it just kind of makes everything a little less worth it in the end. Because we're fighting an old evil again. One that's been lurking in the shadows. Which, again, would have been fine if it was revealed to us very much later in the movie. And in less of a... and he had less of the power that he had. But he has a lot of power still in the Rise of Skywalker, and that sadly kind of brings everything down a little. And one way it kind of leads to the connection being kind of shaky is Kylo and Rey. Now, Kylo Ren is a villain that I think is a very interesting character in the Star Wars lore, because in The Force Awakens, he was chided as being this Darth Vader ripoff, to the point where he eventually was able to break away in The Last Jedi. And sadly, that development is gone now in Rise of Skywalker, to the point where he literally rebuilds his helmet. And as great as we get to see the Knights of Ren, they don't get much. And that short moment where he is still this, Darth Vader ripoff that's trying to goad Rey into the dark side in kind of the similar fashion that Darth Vader did to Luke, it feels familiar, but a lot weaker. Because we've already set up Kylo as the tragic hero. But on the bright side, he does get over that eventually, and his redemption arc, as short as it is definitely worth sitting through. Rey, on the other hand, she's still a strong character, Mary Sue accusations aside, but I think having her trying to relate alongside the old moments of the original trilogy that they're bringing back in does kind of weaken the fact that in The Last Jedi, she was still this insignificant individual who just happened to have some Force-sensitive powers. And I think she would have been stronger if she was given that same individuality that she was introduced to in The Last Jedi. Because in The Rise of Skywalker, she gets the eventual hero journey conclusion, but in the way that kind of feels cliche, for lack of a better word. Like, she has lines that you are expecting her to say, but you deep down you don't want to say to it, and she says them. And it's like, those mixed emotions that you got really kind of turn up a lot. And that's kind of the weakness that The Rise of Skywalker has, is that whereas in Force Awakens it did rely on nostalgia, it still kept the new characters in the forefront to see where they could go. And in Rise of Skywalker, they're taking a backseat to the old guard. Again, would be fine if this was perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Sorry, bad joke. But, I don't know, given that they had to take dialogue for Leia from footage that hasn't been shown and kind of digitally put her in it. I do understand that they wanted to honor Carrie Fisher's memory, but the look of Leia in these scenes where she really wasn't there does kind of feel very weird. And I understand that they also did want to add more with Chewbacca, C3 and C3PO, who are now part of the adventure alongside with these new characters. And to be fair, they do a good job with this. But I feel like it didn't have to be at the cost of, briefly having Poe's past be revealed, only to kind of not really dive deep into it. Although, to be fair, Poe's hotshot character really comes into really good play here. And he eventually gets a really good, space fight that is leagues better than in The Force Awakens. I mean, it's just out of the grand scale of it all. I mean, the plot's simple. You know they're gonna win. But I think the concern is that we needed to have like this, a certain exploration throughout this in order for this ending to feel like it wasn't forced. And I feel like they did kind of bring out that grand scale because they just needed to conclude it in a big way. When really, some of the strengths of the Star Wars movies was that you had a lot of these characters and you were able to give them some proper motivation. And here, I don't know. I feel like the motivation here, it doesn't feel as natural as it did with the past two movies. And given that they were able to give some time for Rose, who I think was a character that was worth exploring, and put her as a side character is pretty much saying something. Is that they didn't have much to really grow upon after The Last Jedi. Because really, I do understand that they wanted to stick with J.J. Abrams' fitting conclusion, but sometimes if you rewrite the plans, you're going to have to follow through with them. And that's what I feel about The Rise of Skywalker, is that it was meant to end a trilogy that was set in stone. But it really wasn't set in stone. Not like the original trilogy where they took years to figure it out. And I guess that's kind of my views on it. As much as I would say that I like it, especially some of the good parts, I don't know, I feel like it latched onto something that really was kind of erased already.